Jeg skal sitte og se på klokka 6. Altså jeg skal jo på jobb klokka 10, det da flekstiden min går ut. Du har også. Men jeg kommer til å sitte der og stå og prate. Det god. Ja, men skal jeg sitte alene på det og se? Det jo litt derfor man skal bestille til seg og mobiler for å sitte stille. Det burde nesten hatt vann. Altså på en måte det bedre med vannmikk som kan bruke. Men nå vi var liksom på vei med det i fly, men vi har veldig langt i sånn retning.
Jeg synes McDonald's
Ja, det morsomt. Tydelig at jeg har valgt noe annet.
Har du sett bloggen? Nei, det har jeg ikke sett.
Ser jo ut som at det står bak eksplosjonen. Han står jo stengt alt.
Ja, men han ser ut som
Hadde du bra i går? Ja, det var bra i går. System in the mess or mess in the system?
The meeting is set. Welcome to Storsalen and Samfundsmøte about the US election. The presidential election is coming up and the entire world is engaged in the final days of the campaign and is anxious to know who will become the president for the next 4 years. Tonight we will speak with 3 political engaged Americans living in Norway and hear what their thoughts of the last 4 years are and their predictions for the next 4. What are their thoughts of the division in the American society? What is their preferred outcome of the election? And why do they bother to stay politically active in a country they do not live in? We will touch on all this and much more during the evening. With us to discuss this, we have the Vice President of Republicans Abroad Norway, Vincent Baugh. We have former leader and spokesperson from Democrats Abroad Norway, Lisa Cooper, and professor at NTNU Jennifer Leigh Bailey. My name is Karin Mjør, and I will be the chairman of this meeting.
And my name is Svært, and I'll be your secretary this evening. The board has following suggestion for tonight's agenda. 1. The meeting is set. 2. Board's protocol. 3. Open lectern. 4. Introduction by Vincent Baugh. 5. Introduction by Lisa Cooper. 6. Introduction by Jennifer Bailey. 7. Entertainment by Strindens Promenadeorkester. 8. Break. 9. Chat or discussion about the US with questions from the audience. 10. Other. 11. Critique of meeting. And 12. Meeting adjourned. Are there any objections regarding this agenda? Does not seem like it. Furthermore, the board has no decisions to report from this week. Thank you.
Before we will begin with tonight's introductions, we will have what we call åpen talerstol, which translates to open lectern. The next 5 minutes you are allowed to talk freely about a political theme. We ask all speakers to respect other speakers and the 5 minutes total. Are there here anyone who wants to express themselves?
Most honored people, good evening, everybody. My name is Eivind, and I'm a student of the history of religions, and a student of Latin and classics. And my short message to you here today is the answer for one of the biggest questions. What do they learn in school? And I would say, nothing, or at least not enough. Because we all are, in our society today, part of a long, unbroken tradition. A tradition that in many ways are hidden for a lot of us. And it is actually a little bit scary that so few students in political science, in sociology, in religious studies, even in philosophy, cannot and are not interested in reading the source texts in their originate language. And they are not able to it because we do not tend to emphasize students to actually go into and try to learn Latin and Greek. I think if we should actually honor the democratic ideals that our society is built upon, we should actually enforce a curriculum that once more includes these classical languages. I think that every student, especially at a high prestige university as ours, NTNU, should actually have a minimum of 30 study points of Latin, 30 study points of the history of idea, and 30 study points of general philosophy, and 30 study points of, call it more freely, critique of the mindsets. This will actually make a very good start for every bachelor student's learning, because this is what you didn't learn anything about in videregående. This is what you need to actually understand the society you are a part of. This is what you need to be able to criticize it. You can think that you have all the information in the world just to Google it in English. That's wrong, that's a lie, because you do not understand the mechanics of the language. You do not tend to understand how this text actually speaks to each other, how they actually makes up a debate that has been continuously going on for 2,500 years of Western civilization. You should all learn Latin. You should all learn a little bit of Greek, classical Greek. And you should start doing it now, because our society today needs it. It is not what Erna Solberg says is important. Maybe in the short term it's not important for the economy, but I think for a healthy democracy, we actually learn and need to learn about the persons that have went before us in many ways in the same slippery slopes, from democracy into tyranny, into dictatorship, and into once more again a despotical system called monarchy. We need to learn and we need to understand the very foundations of our society and the dynamics that actually make the society go forwards. So this is my short message for you today. Learn Latin and try to talk with the new student parliament that was elected yesterday and make them actually go in and try to make this the curriculum for NTNU, so then we can maybe get rid of EIT in the same process.
Actually, can I say something? I'm here to put alcohol on the board, but I'm also here to say something. So I'm gonna, as we say in Norwegian, take two flies in one smack. This week in Under Dusken, the student paper, I think Karen has a very important issue that she wanted to bring up, and this is something I also feel is very important, and that is about the membership of who can be members here at Samfundsmøte. And there's one institution called the Fotofagskolen, which is not included in the members of Studentersamfunnet. And this is something the board would like to discuss with Storsalen. So I just want to encourage people who have meanings about this, and especially the ones who are against it, to say what they mean about it so we can address those issues. That's all.
Thank you. We'll now move on into the first introduction of the night, which is by Vincent Baugh. Please give him a warm welcome.
Hi. My name is Vincent. I'm the vice leader for the Republicans Abroad Norway. I'm a Republican. I support the president. I'm a vet. I'm a black guy. I know that it confuses a lot of people. I'll tell you why. Because it was Joe Biden who said, if you ain't black, you ain't voting for Joe Biden, you ain't black. Really? Seriously? How many people actually believe that? Because it's just a silly thing to say. It's one of the problems I have with Joe Biden, but I'm not really going to go there. I'm going to tell you why a black man supports a supposedly racist president. To be perfectly honest, who isn't racist? Everybody's racist against somebody. Everybody looks down on somebody, somewhere, sometime. So the president has bad habits, so what? Who doesn't? Everybody has bad habits. As a matter of fact, in the Constitution, it doesn't say you have to be a good guy. It doesn't say you have to be honest. What it does say is that you have to take care of the American people. You have to do the people's business. And that means doing the American people's business, not the business of somebody else or some other country or some other interest, but the American people. I'll tell you why this is important. I grew up in Chicago. I'm from that place where they tell you not to go. Rough place. And Chicago, at one point in time, was the most segregated city in the United States, maybe even the world. We had our own little piece of the city, so to speak. We had our own side, South Side. You know, the place where we ruin, where they shoot everybody. There's a reason for that. I'll tell you why. Education. Leadership. Babies having babies. We grew up with that. My parents, the people in my neighborhood, that was a bugaboo for us. This was something we needed to weed out of the black community. Now, the funny thing about this is that although in Chicago we have black aldermen, black this, black that, our situation never changed. We had a mayor, Richard J. Daley. He was called the boss. And the boss ran the state of Illinois from the city of Chicago. Think about that for a minute. Big old United States run from one city, a city that couldn't figure out how to educate its minority members, who couldn't seem to give them jobs, who couldn't seem to equal the playing field. Now, we could go on and on about America's problems. As a matter of fact, if you watch the news, everybody's been doing it. It seems to be the thing to do. But what's more important is that we are all Americans. And that if we are all Americans, the chances should be the same for everybody. And that we haven't gone anywhere until everybody gets to the same place. The fact of the matter is, with this president, we've been getting there. Where I grew up, our black leaders threw us a bone. They didn't solve our problems. They didn't fix our schools. They did not bring jobs to the neighborhood. What they brought was a leadership class that served itself. It was a leadership class that was beholden to the, what you could say, the superior class or the majority class. And that majority class was not us. That's why when you talk about America and you talk about the Republican Party, you have to start talking about black folks. And the reason you have to do that is because it's about time that the nation and the leadership acknowledged who we are. And yes, that does not come at the barrel of a gun. It does not come with a trigger. It comes with a pen, paper, and books. Attention to detail. You don't let the state raise your children. That means you stay out of jail. And you stay out of jail by not doing things that put you in jail in the first place. The reason why the black community is in the state that it is because of our leadership. Us, not the white man. The white man is not our problem. We are our problem. And the Republican Party gives us that opportunity because the Republican Party sees my values, Christian conservative values. Those are values that everybody can see. And basically, those are the values that founded America. America is a Christian conservative area. Sorry. That's how we roll. Now look, it's America. So we have what we call freedom of expression, freedom of speech, all of that. You can say what you want. And during this campaign, everybody seems to have something to say about something. But that's not important. What's more important is that once that's been gotten out there, once you've had your say, what are you going to do? How are you going to help things get better? what makes things better by recognizing what needs to be fixed. That's what a presidential election is all about. The president is elected to fix the problems. Not that he's going to go and fix them himself, of course not. And you can say what you want about unity and how that is accomplished. But as with everything else, there's more than one way to say everything. There is no requirement that he be a nice guy. It is no requirement that he speak, well, softly. It's no requirement that he has celebrity friends or that he's rich. We don't care about that. What we care about is, what will you do for us? And 9 times out of 10, what you can do for us is put money in our pockets. So that, in a week or whenever the election is, it'll be important about you will go in there, draw that curtain, and you will vote for who will put money in your pocket. Because Americans believe that when I have money in my pocket, I am in control of my future. And that's what we want. We want to be in control of our future. And the best way to do that is to elect a president who will allow that to happen. And I don't say allow that like he's not the king, or he's not God. But what he will do is arrange the federal government in such a way that everybody benefits. That's what we're looking for. Interestingly enough, both candidates kind of look that way. They kind of sound that way. But we understand something. He took some very unpopular positions, didn't he? None of you guys are happy about us bailing out of Paris or the Iran deal or anything like that. Okay, and those are subjects that we can talk about all day long. But the underlying principle of those was to return to control of the American taxpayer, return his return on investment. That's what he wants. He pays his hard-earned money to a government, by the way, that we don't even really trust. Even when we like the government, we don't trust them. It's actually embedded in our Constitution that we are not to trust our government. Why? Because government pursues its own ends, just like any corporation is. That's why the little bit of control that the Republicans like to have over private business, stuff like that, because it needs to be controlled a little bit. Not inhibit its growth, not stop it from developing, but making sure that there's opportunity for everybody, and it does not. My opportunity does not supersede your opportunity. Now, yes, it's best when we work together, but the fact of the matter is, that doesn't always happen, and it will not happen by itself. That's why you need a steward. That's what the president is. He's not the king. He's not the ruler. He's the steward of the American taxpayer. As such, he is subject to the American taxpayer. That's why he gets elected only for 4 years. He's not ruler for life. And when he doesn't do what the American people want him to do, he needs to go, and he will go, because we have rules about these things. Now, your media, a certain world media, don't seem to understand that. There are rules. And when when the president neglects or stops to follow the people's will, he won't be president for very long. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. We will move on to the next introduction. Give Lisa Cooper a warm welcome.
Hello there, everyone. Happy Halloween. I'm a bit different. I'm going to actually do a little PowerPoint show, but let's see. Somebody has to enable the screen sharing. Otherwise, you will not be able to follow me. Can the techies get to it? But I really would have actually preferred to have been there. I've been several times in studenter Samfundsmøte, and it really looks, let's see, now I'm connected. Looks like you have a pretty exciting day. Let's see, you guys can see my screen? I can't hear anything. Can somebody say something?
Yes, we can.
Let's see, I guess I got to unmute myself. All right, now I'm ready to roll. Now, happy Halloween again. Now you're going to hear a sort of a different side to the story. And I really do enjoy the tremendous interest that I've seen in Norway for our elections that are coming up. There are a lot of people that do say this is the most important election of our lives. Democracy is at stake. And I think the world actually agrees. But I'll talk about in 10 minutes, a little bit about the issues, a little bit about the Biden-Harris agenda, and also help you understand a little bit about the demographic situation in America and how that's playing out in the parties now and in the future. But I want to get into the polls. Yeah, I want to show you exactly what the polls have been telling us on where we are now and where we will potentially be. But first of all, the big issue in America, Republicans don't like to talk about it, as Vincent didn't either, is COVID. Right now, we're leading the world. This is not the greatest place to be. We're leading the world in the total number of infected. We're up to 9,230,000 Americans are dead. We've had 30 million that have been on unemployment. And we have a president that, even though he got it himself, really doesn't like to talk about it, nor does he really have a strategy. This is something that is playing a big part in our election. Another thing is healthcare. This is probably Obama's #1 accomplishment, getting through Obamacare or healthcare. The Republicans are trying to take it away. November 14th, it'll be up in the Supreme Court. And decided whether or not to do away with healthcare. Obviously a tremendous issue, given that we're in a pandemic. Another thing is the economy. GDP has taken a nosedive. Yeah, we had 4 years that we saw an increase under Trump, obviously based on 8 years of Obama, who was able to turn around the economy during after a recession. But right now, we're in free fall. Yeah, yesterday or the last 2 days, we've seen also a little bit of an increase, but we're nowhere where we should be, and we're not going to get there unless we really handle COVID. But we also have racial inequality. Everybody is not a racist. Okay, you can only be a racist if you are able and have the power to actually prevent the minority or the ones that you're being racist towards access. I think it is quite clear this president is a racist. Black Lives Matter is something that all Americans have been rallying behind. And we now have a president who won't even admit that there's systemic racism neither in America nor in the police system. So we also really have a challenge with truth or lies. Yeah, it doesn't say in the Constitution that we should have a president that is truthful, but that's kind of like one of those things I wouldn't think would be written in the Constitution, Vincent. In addition, we're also seeing systems. Yeah, I don't have enough time to really go into detail, but Trump in the last 4 years has really been able to take a systemic approach to his power. One of the things that has really played out in voter suppression or cheating, if we were to be really honest, is really what he's done in the postal system. That's a big issue, as is the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing, we've had now the Amy Coney Barrett, who was very quickly put into power. And this means a lot for our healthcare, November 14th. This is going to potentially take away quite a few of women's health rights. But on the plus side for Democrats, it's also enabled us to fundraise in records. Now, Biden-Harris, I think this is a winning ticket. This is actually the ticket that I said late last year would be the winning ticket, Build Back Better. We have a career public servant in Joe Biden, and also a tremendously good Lord, I'm trying to talk so fast I can't get my words out, a tremendously qualified African or Black American and Indian women on the ticket. When it comes to what are their priorities, I think the first one is going to do what Donald Trump has not been able to do, and that is to have a national strategy for attacking COVID. That's the problem of where we are today. I think today we had 100,000 new cases, 100,000. Yeah, we're not going to get the economy back unless we start to take this serious and have a national strategy. In addition, there's 4 planks to the agenda. One is climate, get back into the Paris deal. Let's talk about clean energy, but also caregiving. Let's do something for families. In America, you don't have kontantstøtte and you don't have arbeidsmiljøloven. So if you're a family with small kids, you need extra assistance. Plank number 3 is Made in America, where we're going to really have a focus on bringing production back to the States, and especially in the distressed rural, Rust Belt, and southern areas that are really neglected. And the last one, which is the most important and highly neglected by the Trump administration, is addressing the racial wealth gap, and also improving race relations. But let's get into demographics, because there's some important things that are at play. As we know, in 2050, America is going to be majority minority. Yeah, this is what the Republicans fear. And one of the reasons that our Republicans are really very good at voter suppression. What this shows is sort of, if we take a look at religion, we see that the US population in general is predominantly made up of Protestant and Catholics and quite a few unaffiliated. When it comes to race, it's actually at this stage, it's a majority of white people with Latinos and Blacks and Asians, etc. And we're actually predominantly, or just a little bit over 50% female. But let's look at our parties, because I think this will give you an indication of the future. When it comes to the Democratic Party, yes, we have pretty much the same distribution, with a larger distribution of the other religions, aside from Catholic and Protestant. When it comes to race, the Democratic Party looks actually quite like America, and that's important. When it comes to gender, we lag a little bit behind, but we've made significant improvements. But let's take a look at my counterpart on the Republican side. On the religious side, they have a tremendous amount of Protestants, Protestants also being the infamous evangelicals that you'll also very often hear, more so than the Catholics, with a much less distribution of the other religions. But when we look at race, this is where you see it. This is the problem for the Republican Party now and going forward. They have almost no representation of other ethnicities. And also with women, they have a long way to go. In fact, if we take a deeper look into the contrast between the Republican and the Democratic Party and see what other identities are actually sort of entrenched into the Republican and the Democratic Party, we see the white evangelicals, 80% are on the sort of on the Republican side, where the Republicans also have a larger share of white, non-college educated men, rural Southerners, religious service attenders, and you start to get a picture. You start to understand Donald Trump's rhetoric, and who he's really talking to. You also see on our side, our base is the African-American woman, and also white college women. And that is why, or one of the reasons why Donald Trump is so steadfastly trying to actually attract the stay-at-home suburban woman. I think this is also important to look at, in addition to these different identities, to also have a look at the share of the electorate, because then you see exactly how much these groups mean in an election. I'd love to put those 2 slides up first, because I think it gives a really important background of who's in the different parties and why, or you can really at that stage understand the sort of the strategies that they have and who they're trying to appeal to and talk to. But let's talk to the polls. In America, we're super bad at actually even voting. This is a little bit of the statistics on the percentage of Americans that even bother to put in their vote. In 2016, we're at 55.5%. I think in Norway, you're at least up to 70%, maybe a little bit less. We had the highest turnout in the first time that Barack Obama. So we really have a way to go. In fact, some people say it's the people that sit at home that are the ones that win the elections. When it comes to who's winning right now, and this is based on 538 from yesterday's figures, or I guess 2 days ago, we're ahead. The Democrats are ahead. In fact, Joe Biden, when we look at this, he's been ahead since he got in, or actually even before he got in. And if you remember, before he got in, this is when Donald Trump started his little funky Ukrainian business that has led to his impeachment, because he was afraid of Biden. I think everyone has understood that Biden has the appeal, he has the honesty, he has the experience, and he is probably the one that Donald Trump has feared the most. But Donald Trump has never managed to be ahead of him in the polls. Now, the polls aren't perfect, but the polls are also showing us that we are favored to win the Senate, and we are also favored clearly to win the House. And that's called a trifecta, where we win the House, the Senate, and the House and the Senate and the White House. Yes, we've had problems with the polls. The polls in 2016 were a tremendous disappointment for many. Right now, I think they're saying there's a 78% that we actually get a trifecta. In 2016, they actually were 86% chance that Hillary Clinton would win. There were problems with the polls. We had the Comey investigation that came in. They didn't really look at the backgrounds of the people that were polled, so there were too many college educated voters. In addition to the fact they didn't really even poll in some of the states that became swing states. I'm pretty confident that they know what they're doing. Polling is a business. If they don't get it right this time, there's no polling industry, basically, after this. And we also have two totally different candidates. Clinton is not the same as Joe Biden, who is much stronger. They've even tried to do a little bit of sensitivity analysis. If they were to have the same problems that they had last time in the polls, where would the advantage be placed? Now, you know, this number has to be 270. So if everything static, they're saying that Biden has a chance to win 357 electoral votes. You need 270. And if they were to say that, you know, the polls could be just as bad as they were in 2016, well, we're still well over that number. Early voting in America has been beyond belief, beyond belief. I believe it's 86 million people that have voted. In certain states, that's more than have voted in the entire election. It's super encouraging. There's more youth that are voting, and there are 6 times more, as many Black voters are casting their votes this time than they did in 2016. And part of this has to do with COVID, but so much has to do with 4 years under Donald Trump. Texas is blowing things out of proportion, but we are afraid. We are looking at the days after the election with Donald Trump and his, you know, direct link with the white supremacists, direct link with the Proud Boys. We are expecting problems. Law enforcement is ready. Washington, D.C. has already started to board up businesses because they're afraid of what's going to happen on the 4th. Donald Trump has also announced he's going to continue with his rallies even after the election. We also know that there are a tremendous amount of efforts on the Republican side to suppress the vote. They're in doing lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. In fact, most of their money, which they don't have very much money left, I think on our side, we have at least a $300 to $400 million advantage, which is why you'll see the most amazing number of campaign ads on our side, and you'll see rallies on his side. They've used most of their money in the courts, and I think it's a tremendous disservice both to the system, and I think the world now understands what voter suppression means. I think that was the end of my slide. This is just a little bit on where we're seeing what's happening in America. And it's been actually quite fascinating. There are now states like North Carolina, Arizona, Florida, Texas is suddenly looking like it could be a Democratic advantage. It seems like most Americans really want to vote Trump out. Most Americans see that the Democratic Party platform is the way of the future. That yes, we don't want a racist in the White House. We want someone that speaks honestly. We want someone that is taking care of us and taking care and taking a proper role in the diplomacy globally. Oops. And I think that was it for me.
Thank you, Lisa. We will now move on to tonight's third introduction, which is by Jennifer Bailey. Give her a warm welcome.
Hi. Oops, there it is. Hello, everyone. I can see nothing from up here except, a little glimmer of light here and there. Again, my name is Jennifer Bailey. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Dragvoll here. I'm not here as an operative on for the Democratic Party or for the Republican Party. I am here as a citizen and someone who's politically interested. You've probably heard enough from me in papers and so forth. They call me, they ask, what can I say? Okay. I will say, though, I'm a Democrat, so that probably isn't very surprising to those of you who've heard about me anyway. So I've been asked to address three different questions tonight. One about how do I experience the election here in Norway? As I said, in Norway as a citizen. I'm a political scientist, so what are my observations or why am I interested in this as a political scientist, particularly as someone operating here from Norway? And thirdly, why is this election so important from the perspective of Norwegians? Okay, so let me take each one of those in turn. First of all, why am I, as a citizen living in Norway, why am I so fixated on this election back in the United States? Let me tell you a little bit about my background. I came to Norway back in 1992. I didn't particularly mean to come to Norway, but it happens when you marry a Norwegian, you know, somehow, there we were. But it wasn't my life's ambition to move to Norway, so I ended up here. That's fine. I personally, that didn't sound very nice. Okay. I'm the daughter of a military officer, an Army officer. He served in Vietnam. I've moved quite a bit in my life, living abroad many times. My entrance into politics is first and foremost through international relations and questions of that nature, and then into political, national politics has been really my set of interests. Now, just to say, to enhance the knowledge a little bit, my father went to VMI, Virginia Military Institution, where Stonewall Jackson of Civil War fame used to teach, and very close to where Robert E. Lee, St. Robert of Virginia, Civil War general, is buried. In other words, deeply immersed in the culture of Virginia as the leading, as we see it, the leading state of the American Civil War. So I have a lot of, my background is actually quite conservative, but over the years I've taken up issues and been pressed in a different direction over time. As indeed was my father, a man who believed in the U.S. Army's idea that there was no black or white, but only green, the color of the Army, integration, equal rights for all, that sort of thing. That's what drove me. And the more I got interested in politics, the more those issues became central to the things I was interested in. As a citizen, I've been here since 1992. I've watched a lot of different elections from here. This election is unique. I think my first visit to Norway was back when Reagan was running, which was quite interesting from the Norwegian perspective. And then since then, back and forth, and now living here, obviously this election's gotten more interest than any other election. It's all been interesting. But it was when Trump came, and this election, to re-elect Trump, that's when things really got wound up. And I think it's because it's not a question of Democratic versus Republican in this race. Trump is a different sort of figure. And Trump is not really a traditional Republican at all. Not only is Trump not a traditional Republican, he's not really a traditional American president in any way. Now, you could see that as a good thing, but in many ways, it's a bad thing. For example, if you think about what the president is supposed to be, he's elected, the only figure in the United States that's elected by the entire country. Yes, it's a party choice, a Democratic candidate or a Republican candidate, because that's how the system rolls. But when you're elected, you're supposed to be the president that represents the entire country. It's very clear that the current president never had any intention to represent the entire country and has practiced deeply splitting, deeply nasty, highly partisan politics, including holding different states hostage in case, if they don't show proper deference to him. In many, many ways, he violates all of the norms that a president should follow. As a citizen, then I have to say, watching this, I'm saying, yes, this election gets a lot of interest because we have a president who is so deeply violating norms of proper behavior, democratic operation, how do you act in a democracy, and not to mention common courtesy. So my growing interest in this election has a lot to do with, I'm always interested in who wins the election, always interested in how the system works, whether it's functioning well, but this election is different. I was in DC for the 2000 election when Gore lost. That was fascinating. I could separate myself from, I was not particularly happy Bush won, but it was not the end of the world. I'm not so sure about this election. Okay. As a political scientist, then, I'm very interested in the question of functioning democracies. What is going on in the United States? Well, it's been mentioned that there's very little trust in the American president or the American government. In fact, if you widen the view, you'll see there are very few institutions in which all citizens actually have confidence. It's deeply split. So some Americans watch Fox News and others watch CNN or MSNBC. You're getting two separate cultures, deeply divisive. The question then is, what institutions then can draw the United States back together? As a political scientist, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. Also, as a political scientist, I watch how the political system is functioning, how the voting is being carried out, and I'm extremely concerned, again, both as a citizen and as a student of politics, as to just how deeply disturbing the current president is, but it's not just Trump, it's the entire GOP. Because the GOP, the grand old party, the Republican Party we have today, is no longer the GOP I grew up with. It's not the party of Ronald Reagan or George Herbert Walker Bush or even of George W. Bush. It's increasingly the party of Trump. And as the party of Trump, it's not paying attention to market-type issues. It's not paying attention to foreign policy issues the way Republicans used to. It's true that Trump is tougher on China, as he well ought to be, but that's a different issue. We'll take that up a different day. Broken clock can be right twice a day, as we say. But it's not a country, it's not a GOP that worries about budget deficits. The budget deficit's never been worse than it has under this president. Instead, we have an administration that retweets QAnon tweets, has no intention of making a clear, very clear, not distancing himself from not just racist, but militant, violent, potentially violent racists. A president who incites the voters of Minnesota to take the governor of Minnesota hostage. a president who does not hesitate to violate the fundamental norms of a democratic society. If he should win again, well, Vincent said there are rules about this, about how the American system works. I don't think there'll be any rules if this president is reelected. All of the checks and balances in the American system have been progressively weakened and falling away. I'm not so sure what will happen in another 4 years. I might not be standing here in 4 years to discuss the American election of 2024. Why is Norway interested in this? I think, as many people I think the image that comes to mind is a slow motion train wreck. Right? We all watch this country that's been strutting around the world talking about democracy to other people, but not just, and watch how this is disintegrating before our eyes. Why is that important to Norway? Well, anyone who's a member of a democratic society should be worried about this. But Norway is also has been a leader of lots of military alliances, and of course is the major alliance in which Norway is connected. It becomes more and more difficult for Norway to join and back the leadership of a country that seems to be heading in a much darker direction than the Norwegian society is comfortable with. So I think it poses real problems for the democratic alliance of states that is NATO, American leadership around the world, and ultimately the fate of a country that sits there with a lot of nuclear weapons. And I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Before we head into the break, we are honored to have with us the Student Society's very own Strindens Promenadeorkester to give us some cultural inputs. Please give them a warm welcome.
Is this thing on? Where's the mic that's on? Is that one? Is that one working? Is that one? Okay. My bad! Yeah, there we are. Thank you so much for having us. We're like so honored to be here playing for you guys. Let me just take a second to introduce my awesome band. We have Steve. Steve, yeah. Go back, Steve. Steve, such a fun guy, you know. Steve, one time he came to the rehearsal with 2 different socks, and now we were all like, "Whoa, Steve, crazy man, you know." And then we have Steve Jr. Yeah, you here, Steve Jr. They're not related. Then we have Big Steve on the tuba. Yeah. And then we have even bigger Steve on the trumpet. And then on the big drum we have Racist Steve. Yeah, and then we have not racist Steve right beside him. And then we have Steve that that doesn't see color, he doesn't see race. Yeah. And then we have Steve that only sees color, only sees race. Opposite of colorblind. Yeah. In these troubling times, we need to think about the past. And my grandfather, he has a great saying that was, it was like, said to me, Steve, my name is also Steve. He said, Steve, never look at your neighbor's wife's cow unless you're in love. So it actually works a bit better like in the old times because you have a bunch of cows there. Anyway, we are Strindens Promenade Orchestra, and we come straight from the Samfundsmøte.
I'm sorry for my singing. I'm not exactly Kjartan Salvesen, but it will do. I was just lost in the glory that is the United States. United States, yes, we love the States. They're so united. And I think the Americans, they love a lot of things. What do they love? I think they love the Second Amendment and...
First aid.
First aid, yes, they love first aid. And they also like, what else do they like? It doesn't matter what they like. What matters is what we as outsiders like. We like the fact that they have brought great things in, for example, medical research, science and technology. Woo! Like the moon landing is great and stuff. And Maccan is also really great. We have something else that's really great. It's called jazz. Yes. It comes from a place far, far in the deep valleys, and then a little further down the road to the coast, a place called New Orleans. And New Orleans is probably the birthplace of jazz. I think it is, yes. And we will go down memory lane, specifically a lane called Bourbon Street.
for coming here today. Yes, but I mean, why wouldn't you? We are at the Samfundsmøte, and that is the greatest place to be in the whole world. I mean, it's the best. It is tremendous, yes. And today we are seeing here Strindens, and Strindens, listen up. Strindens, yeah, these are good people. Yeah, very good people. I mean, even the vice president told me, and I mean, even my friends told me, yeah, Strindens is the best. Yes, yeah. And yeah, okay, and you want to hear more of Strindens? Then on the 18th of November, there are going to be roller skates, and there are going to be jazz, and it's going to be music, and it's going to be good. I mean, it's going to be the great, and we are going to make Storsalen great again. Because we are playing at Storsalen, and then after we have played at Storsalen, we're going to build a wall, and we're going to make Lofte pay for it. Okay, yeah, thank you. Here is sleep.
a short break for about 10 minutes.
Peach. Jeg håper de har muta de her, hvis ikke så er jeg på stream. Men den har. Så da er det bare... Ja, tenker du det? Funker det? Ja.
Please quiet down again. Continuing, we will have a conversation about the US election. We will also encourage you, the audience, to ask any questions that you have. And if you should have any questions, you should go over to Nina, which sits over there, and you can ask your question from the lectern afterwards. The microphone will be wiped down between each speaker for your safety, so please step down after you have asked your question. The word is yours, Jakob.
Great. There we are. We have light as well. Good evening and welcome. We've had three interesting introductory speeches. Gives us a lot to talk about. And I just want to start by doing a little bit closer examination of being American in Norway. As you all know, our panel consists of 3 Americans living in Norway, and they are politically active. And the aim tonight is to get a bit of an insight into how they think and what they think about the upcoming election on Tuesday night. And I want to start with a bit of a big question, and I want to direct it to you first, Vincent. The question is basically just to ease us into more conversation. But Jennifer used the analogy of a slow train wreck. Mm-hmm. Is the United States a derailed train? Has it gone too far?
Well, I'll tell you this. There hasn't been a period in American history where we haven't been at each other's throat. The difference here is that it's all over the place. You can't escape it. The internet this, the Google that, that's the problem. But we've always been, before we effect change, before we decide where we're going, we slug it out.
And it boils.
It always does. Mm. We always come back to an American consensus. But we need, in our quest to have everyone heard, everybody gets into the fight. And yes, sometimes it looks like a gang fight. And from over here, you look over here, sometimes you go, oh no, not again. Hey, no, make it stop. But the fact of the matter is, there isn't anything that we've ever done that didn't involve public discourse. And sometimes that public discourse, maybe it got out of control. Maybe it sometimes is unseemly. The nonsense for the 2000 election was a prime example. That was just nonsense, right? Now this here with Trump, it's just more of the same. It's nothing more, it's nothing new. Yes, we throw this element, that element, but it's the same. It's basically almost always, we argue about the same thing. We just really need to get it together, and we do, after we've punched out each other.
So you're more exposed to it. I want to direct the question to you as well, Lisa. I think you're muted.
That's always the fun thing with doing this.
This is the Zoom era, and we're always muted.
No, I disagree with Vincent in a sense, because I think it's more personal this time. I think, you know, and was talked about earlier, you know, the breaking of norms. We've never seen it to such an extent. We've never seen using your minister, your attorney general to, you know, to try to pave the way on certain rules. We've never seen these many lies. We've never seen you know, the rise of white supremacy is now considered one of the, you know, the most, you know, existential threats in America. You know, it's yes, discourse. We've seen, I think after Obama came in 2008, you know, the Republican Party really started to do backflips. You know, it shocked their system. Mitch McConnell has been amazingly, when it comes to preventing any legislation on Obama's side. So in the last 4 years of Obama, he wasn't able to get anything done. But now we're in a different era. It feels different. It's, you know, when you have a president that can't even condemn white supremacy, can't even, you know, help or speak to the racial inequalities, you know, and that's one thing, you know, let's put race aside, but he can't even, you know, show empathy for 230,000 Americans that are dying of COVID. You know, it's it's shocked and touched all Americans. I'm sorry, I totally agree with the train wreck, and I totally agree that it's, or disagree with Vincent that, this is how it is, this is not how it is, and this is not how it should be.
Jennifer, is it the breaking of norms? Is that all that is the problem?
Well, can I just also say something about what, I'm actually somewhere between Vincent and Lisa.
Perfect.
And that's because I look back at the United States and I see the U.S. was born with a couple of original sins. African slavery, treatment of Indians. And it was so deeply split that we got a federalist system because we couldn't unite at the national level. We had too many sections with too many deep differences of opinion. So federalism, trying to give power to individual localities to have decide a lot of their own things, that was the whole system. And then we had that little kerfluffle called the Civil War, right? And I take General Grant, later President Grant's notion that the South lost that war, and as a Southerner, I grew up thinking all the good people fought for the South, but thank God they lost. This was my heritage there. But the idea was that you lost and you were supposed to go forward and make progress from there. And yes, the late 1800s was a really raucous period, but particularly when you turn the corner after the Second World War, I thought we were making genuine progress coming up towards a lighter future in which we were working through these issues.
But is it a societal scar left by the Civil War that still makes it?
It's still there. This is what I thought was progress was a lot of stuff being papered over and people not actually understanding that what happened in the United States had really happened, that a lot of feelings were still there, the consensus, people, we moved forward, but there were still deep pockets of people who didn't agree. And now Trump has let all of that come out, and the deepest divisions and the ugliest bits come out.
Vincent, what if anything has gone wrong?
There has never been a racial or ethnic group in the United States that didn't have, in essence, to make its bones. We are no different. Simply because we were brought here against our will and held in slavery is not an excuse to do what every other American ethnic group has ever have to done, and that is to make your bones in America.
But have you had the same opportunities?
Yes, we have.
Have you really?
Yes, yes. My father, my grandfather, we are all military. We're all military veterans. Yes, you might be able to say that, yeah, that was the one place that there was equality, but not always. It had to evolve over time, like everything else has got to evolve. So in America, if you want to be an American, you better act like one. So how do you act like an American? When times are tough, you just pull yourself together and you get it done. You do what you need to do, and you don't make excuses for the way being hard.
Lisa.
Yeah, it's actually quite disheartening for hearing Vincent saying that as an African American, and actually that's almost just what Jared Kushner said, that Black people need to stop complaining. I think it is the racial inequalities are actually quite research proven in the United States society, and that you can just look at the statistics. African Americans, they have a lower income rate, income levels. You have, I think they were just saying yesterday, if you are white and have been to prison, you are more likely to get a job than an African American that actually is college educated. The playing ground is not level at all, and it's even disheartening to hear that being said by an African American. We can also look at Barack Obama, what he was able to actually accomplish. Yes, he was able to become president of the United States, but the system and the Republicans were able to actually prevent extreme amount of legislation in his last year. Do you know how many judges that Mitch McConnell was able to appoint in the 4 years of Trump? It was 194. And why were there 194 judge spots that were open? That's because there were 194 judges that Obama tried to get through in his last term, but that Mitch McConnell stopped. So there are so many systemic failures, that keep the African American and other brown people, whether they're Asian or they're Hispanic, in the lower portion of achievement scales. And it's really a shame to hear an African American that will not actually admit that that is the case.
Jennifer?
I obviously can't speak to the African American experience, but I can speak to the white Southern experience. And I'm here to tell you that racism is very much alive in the United States. I spent a lot of time...
On a systemic level?
I would think both at a systemic and a personal level. I would spend a lot of time personally working against it, in both my own experiences and how I treat other people, and looking to the best in other people, but I have to admit over time that it's there, it's persistent, and I'm afraid you talk about the election of President Obama, but what happened when President Obama was elected? For me, not perfect, a sign of progress, not that racial problems were done, but a sign of progress. And the weapons sales in the United States went up dramatically when President Obama was elected. And also militia groups, particularly white, separatist, white, militant militia groups, had a resurgence. You can check these figures out on the Southern Law Poverty Center, as I think, some arrangement of those words. You see infiltration of police forces around the United States of white racists and white supremacist groups. Yes, I think there's a systemic racism in the United States. A lot of it is lodged in law enforcement. Not that there aren't a lot of good policemen out there. There are. But unfortunately, there's some deep problems that people are denying and are not being addressed.
I just want to remind the audience that you are able to ask your questions, and I'd like to ask Eirik Sander to get ready to ask his. I just want to ask a little bit about your personal experience. Do you consider it a strength living abroad? Are you looking back at the politics in the US? Do you have like a healthy distance to the trouble, Vincent?
What would be a healthy distance?
Well,
from
you're not
being a
living
black...
through it,
Wait,
basically.
let me go. What would be a healthy difference between living in a white community there and a white community here? What would be a healthy distance?
Well, asking more about how do you perceive the politics. You are living now in what you'd call probably a socialist country. Are you more colored by the experiencing of living in Norway? Have you lost some of your Republican values coming here?
No, as a matter of fact, they've become strengthened.
Really?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
For the most part, you have that here. You have freedom. It's like America, okay? You have freedom of expression. That I'm able to express the fact, like I did in the United States also, like I continue to do wherever I am. It's just that I grew up where you had no chance. I can tell you, you find a chance, you make a chance, because that's what Americans do. And that even though the way is hard, anything hard is worth doing. Because if it wasn't worth doing, it wouldn't be hard. So that, okay, yeah, white people hate us, big deal. What's the answer? Hate them back, kill them? No. Do better. And then when you do better, they do better. And even if they don't, it still remains, you did better. You saw the challenge. You didn't ask for quarter. You worked within that challenge. And then you are the stronger for it.
Great. We'll take a question from the audience. Eirik? It's like climbing a mountain today.
Honored assembly, I think we've ended up saying. My question is, I'm sorry to say, somewhat of a three-parter. But I want to discuss the slogans for both campaigns. And Vincent, you were wearing the famous hat earlier with the famous MAGA slogan. You seem to have left it over by the table. Make America great again, which is still used by the president in this election, 4 years on. The president has also introduced the slogan, Keep America Great, this year. So which is it? And when was the last time America was great? During the Bush years? During the Obama years?
When did it stop being great?
I'm asking you. So that's a question
Well, that
for
would
you.
be my answer. It didn't stop being great.
Okay. I have two more questions, sorry.
Yeah,
yeah. And to Lisa, Build Back Better, which is the campaign slogan for Biden and Harris. When was better? Are you just riding on the, copying the MAGA slogan, the MAGA nostalgia? And to Jennifer, which slogan do you find the most persuasive? Thank you.
If I can pipe in, I think that the Build Back Better is talking about building back the economy in a better way, not with the Trumpian or Trump-esque themes of nepotism, of really destroying the structures, of building it back better for everyone, better for the ones that are unemployed, underemployed, and really embracing all of America. Yeah. When was it better? I don't think that's what the slogan means. It means build it back better than what it's been built now.
Vincent, would you like to answer the first question?
Yeah, it was hard getting that out, wasn't it? I mean, they just didn't hang together. The fact of the matter is, building back better from what?
But he asked you about the MAGA slogan.
Okay, the MAGA slogan, Make America Great Again.
Right? It implies that it's not been great for a while.
A reflection of the fact that Washington had become what Washington is. Congress has never, in spite of the fact that it's elected by the people, has never been popular. They are always slow. As a matter of fact, it is the presidential office that responds the quickest to the American people. Because actually, the American president has to rotate. He only got 8 years max. 4 years if you don't get it right the first time. So that Congress has never, ever been popular. Congress is not how you get things done. It's through the president office.
But does he imply
The
that...
political scientist in me wants to rebel against that. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry?
The political scientist in me has problems with that.
But the politician over here, the one that feels the pulse of the people, can tell you that's what's important.
Please comment, Jennifer. Please go ahead.
We have to ask who's elected to Congress and why they're elected, right? One of the problems with democracy is that you talk a lot and you try to get a lot of different points of views to reconcile them so that you can move forward together, and process as a part of the deal with the democracy as you try to gather people up and find a new way forward. Now, I have to say that the trust of Congress is very low. I think it's 17%, which is like...
Which should be a democratic problem.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, why do we vote for the people we have in Congress in the first place? Now, I have some real issues as a political scientist, is what drives choice for political office. But I will say that it certainly is not helped by the election laws and the amount of money sloshing around in the American system, a lot of which was enabled by the GOP.
I just want you to answer real quick, what's the more effective slogan?
The more effective slogan, well, it won't be too surprising that I'm like the Biden slogan, and build back. What would I build back? I think this current administration has eviscerated a lot of the federal agencies, such as the EPA and others. The State Department's been totally gutted. Many agencies have been stripped of expertise, and I would say, let's take this as a Schumpeterian moment of creative destruction and then build back the structures of government in a much better way to meet a new society, new societal challenges, including environmental issues, renewable energy, and that sort of thing. So yeah, build the economy, because coal, time is over for coal. It's time to head towards renewables. So yes, it's time for to build on the destruction that has been the Trump administration and look forward to progressive sunrise industries and put the sunset industries behind us.
Elisa, comment?
No, I think that was very well said. I think one of the things that is a very Republican mantra is they want to reduce the government and reduce regulations, and what they did to the Environmental Protection Agency was was mind-boggling. I think they took the word climate change off the website within a few months. I'd also like to add what they've done to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, while we're in a pandemic is another. And these have true and significant systemic challenges for our nation going forward. So I totally agree. I'd also like to say what they've done with the Justice Department and how electing a crony in William Barr, who was obviously retired, and put into place just really to have Trump's back more than it was to really promote justice in the country, has been is against all norms. And also potentially illegal.
I just want to talk a little bit more about the political divide that now exists. Over the last decade, the parties have become more extreme. There's less common ground, there's less bipartisanship. You have a more fragmented political reality. Why do you think that is, Vincent?
Because history tends to repeat itself. When you have a do-nothing Congress, when you have entrenched, what you call it, elites, when they've been around too long, and they get to thinking that they speak for the country, or it's not important that they speak for everybody, they speak for their own doctrines, on their own dogma, when in effect, the country is going in another direction. The fact of the matter is that, once again, Congress and our elected elites actually are going in one direction and the country's going in another direction. And the fact of the matter is they lag behind us socially. That's why elections count. That's why we fight over elections.
But do you think this is a part of a cycle?
I believe it's a part of the cycle. And every major issue we've ever had, since even taking Indian lands, even that was a fight. Right? If you go over the Civil War, that was just plain ugly. That's to the extreme. That really didn't need to happen. But the fact is that it did. And that slavery, racism, all of that came later. What was more important was keeping the Union together. Because we needed to be of one mind as one country. But we cannot make that decision until we decide what we hold to be important.
Lisa, I just want to ask you about the Democratic Party, because you've had the Republican Party, they've ended up becoming more of a Tea Party, the whole party, rather than just a wing of it, basically. Will that make the Democrats more centered and more to the right? Will it all push the Democrats towards the Republicans, or push?
The first thing I'd like to say, what Donald Trump has really done with the Republican Party is he's scared them so much to having any sort of discourse with him because of fear of retaliation. Yeah.
But will that problem disappear with Trump?
Once Trump's gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. I think my key, intellectual curiosity lies in what happens with the Republican Party once Trump is gone, and once he's, hopefully out of office or voted out of office within the next 2 weeks, and physically out by the end of January. But what I think is going to happen to the Democratic Party, which is what you're asking, is I think one of the benefits of the Democratic Party, which I tried to show on my slides, is that we have a tremendous diversity. We have racial diversity. We have a diversity when it comes to gender, but we also have a diversity when it comes to ideology. Yeah, we have Bernie Sanders and the squad that are way off to the left. We have the more moderate, and we have actually the conservative liberals. And that's what I think is going to be our strength. But there's going to be a new, very hard discussion once we hopefully win the trifecta, is how we incorporate some of the Bernie Sanders, AOC and the squad type policies, be it, looking at the new Green Deal, looking at how far we should go on raising minimum wages. But I think that's what's going to be our strength. Yeah, and I actually think that we have already seen that the Democratic Party has gone a little bit more to the left. Yeah, and I credit that so much to the squad and Bernie Sanders. That has also opened our eyes. I consider myself extremely moderate liberal, but they've let us see that the problems are a hell of a lot bigger than we thought, a hell of a lot more structural, and they need much bigger and hairier solutions than we actually really thought were possible. And that's what I think is the strength of our party. And yes, we're going to move a little bit, I would say, to the left more than the right. Or we're going to really redefine what is the middle, the right, and the left, because those sort of boundaries have always driven me slightly bananas.
Just let me ask you this, Jennifer. Because of the fragmented nature of the Democratic Party, as she describes, are they fit to govern? Will they be effective?
Always, Will Rogers once said, I don't belong to any organized political party, I'm a Democrat. Yeah, the Democrats are not always marching in lockstep together, but that's because, it's going to be difficult. There are going to be a lot of demands, and there's a lot of pent-up frustration with what's going on now, and there's going to be a lot of demands to do stuff. But fit to govern, the thing is that the Democratic Party is not a cult. And it's not the political party the way Norway has political parties, in which in a multi-party system you can have strict party discipline. The American political system was built around two broad kinds of parties, in which, for example, in the old days you could have lots of different kinds of Republicans and lots of different kinds of Democrats, and legislation was passed through by building, not getting party agreement, but getting senator by senator, representative by representative type agreement. So you got blue dog Democrats and aligning with some conservative Republicans, and then some Nelson Rockefeller type to really go back in time. Nelson Rockefeller Republicans working together with Ted Kennedy, for example, to drive through more progressive legislation. Today we have a broad coalition voting against Trump. The people coming in are going to be very broad, as Lisa's saying. And what are they going to do? They're going to negotiate and hammer it out. And so, yes, they'll be fit to govern, but it's not always going to be a pretty process. It's not going to work in lockstep, and there are going to be fights between the progressive and the more centrist wings of the party, for sure.
Which is quite healthy, probably. We'll do a question from the audience. So Sigurd Eilerås, could you please come and ask your question? And then Eivind Rindal can get ready to ask his. And I just want to do a quick one before he comes up here. Is the political divide, is that a symptom of the two-party system?
Oh, this is the question that, as a comparative politics person, I get asked. It didn't used to be quite like this in the United States, and it had these very broad coalitions for each party. So the real question is it an inevitable output of a two-party system, the kinds of voting system we have? And I don't know. We're here today. I'm not quite sure what drove that. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think there's a tendency in a two-party system to evolve into somewhat different groups, but I think there's something else going on that's deeper than simply the voting system.
Great. Please.
Lisa briefly talked about the Supreme Court. In Norway, we learned that it should be separation of power between politicians and the law. And me as a European, I think it's hard to understand why you continue nominating partisan people to the Supreme Court. What is the argument to continue nominating partisan judges?
Sorry, Lisa, before you answer that, can I just give the word really quick to Karen?
Yes, I'm wondering if the audience can accept that we close the speaker list in 3 minutes. Excellent, thank you.
Great, Lisa, go ahead.
I actually wonder if the professor here should answer that, sort of from more of a structural standpoint. I think that the Supreme Court has always been, we say it's a non-partisan, but it really is a very partisan issue. It's sort of one of the carrots or the diamonds that each president has, is the ability to put a Supreme Court or one justice, or hopefully two, or maybe even three during their term, that abides by their ideology. I think it was really the Republicans that put a schism in the ruling and the process, and sort of the democratic way that it usually happens, when in Obama's last term, 11 months before the new election, where they refused to bring up Merrill, who was, yes, liberal, but not 100% liberal. So, I mean, he was actually sort of considered even a moderate. I think that was something that sent shockwaves through the political system at really making it more of a polarized my way or your way, or liberal or conservative judge. But I totally agree with the concern that that there should be that separation. But I think it's much better that the professor talks about more of the process.
Vincent, comment, and then Ivan, please get ready.
I'll just be real quick about this. The whole reason that the Supreme Court justices serve for life is so that they outlast the administration that put them there. In other words, the longer that they stay on the court, the further away they get away from party politics. And the further away the court is away from party politics, there are people in the court now who served on presidents a long time ago. Such will be the case now. These Trump Supreme Court justices will outlive the Trump administration. So that keeps them impartial, because they are not beholden to the administration. They do not leave with the administration that gave them the justice, that gave them the term. They outlast the administration that put them there, and that's their purpose. That's why they serve for life.
But
Can I jump in there?
Yeah.
That is the idea. That's what I grew up with. And then we get this notion, like Earl Warren, leader of one of the most liberal courts, was appointed by President Eisenhower, drove the court in a much more leftist direction, much to Mr. Eisenhower's surprise, I think. But what we have today is we put in really, now people are being steadily more selected for not just being whether they're conservative or not, but it seems to me beyond that to being heavily partisan, not just conservative in philosophy, but actually partisan. We put these people in court, they're going to sit there. Clarence Thomas has been sitting there for 30 years. He may sit there for another 10 or 20. That means that his philosophy sits there out of control of the political spectrum, as supposed to be, for another years and years. We have a Supreme Court then that has a group of people that sit there for years and years and years, whether they have any relationship to what anybody in the United States wants or not. There's, by the way, so the notion of checks and balances has come up. The idea, right now we have a court that is so conservative that all laws will stop at the Supreme Court. They can declare everything unconstitutional. They could even declare Social Security unconstitutional. That was, in fact, the last time we began talking about expanding the court was when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was in there trying to put in progressive programs during the Great Depression. So technically, if you're going to be an originalist, as they say they are, you could declare it all unconstitutional. No more Social Security, certainly no more Obamacare, all this stuff. But the Constitution was not made to stop at the Supreme Court. Congress also has a check on the Supreme Court. And that check is to increase the number of Supreme Court justices on the court.
Which is a heavily discussed issue.
It's a heavily discussed issue, but if we want to talk originalism on the Constitution, it's not in the Constitution how many Supreme Court justices there are. That's set by Congress. Right?
So they have the ability, basically.
It's a norm, but we're in a situation in which all kinds of norms have been run over by trucks by the GOP. The GOP decided to play this game. Now I think Democrats will step up and say, well, let's increase the number of justices in the Supreme Court. Two can play at that game, sadly enough.
Great.
I'd also like to add, I think they won't only pack it in the Supreme Court. I think we will see also justices being packed in the federal level.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
All the way down.
They've been quite effective. We're going to have to move on. So, Ivan, please ask your questions. And I'm going to ask you to answer a bit more briefly because we are running out of time. And we've got tons of questions to get through.
Yes, let's talk about the Rust Belt.
Briefly.
Yes, and to say it very brief, several of these cities, these towns, these counties have faced more than 4 decades of a recession. The economy today is worse in many places than it was 50 years ago. And my very brief question, is there actually any hope? And what are, especially to the party representatives here, what are actually your party's track record for the last 40 years, the last 4 decades of political work? Are there actually any hope for the working class cities of the Americas of the yesteryears?
Vincent, please.
The America of yesteryears? We would happen to be in the 21st century, right?
Yeah, he asked.
I heard what he said.
Of people left behind.
I heard what he said, but the fact of the matter is, there's a lot to be said for progress. That that's too bad. But then again, to use the example that came with the automobile, right? Whatever happened to all the horse bridles, right? The horse industry is about to die out because of the automobile. No. What happens is innovation. Things change. The Rust Belt was the Rust Belt. The reason it was a Rust Belt, because it's no longer needed. Yes, those jobs need to be recycled, redone, refinished, repurposed. But the fact of the matter is, in all systems, Democrat, Republican, middle of the road, there's got to be change. This is not 18th century. This is not the 19th. This is the 21st century. So they need 21st century jobs. When it is not needed, it's not needed. And America always progresses.
But has the administration succeeded in that?
Has any administration received reviving the Rust Belt? It's not going to revive as the Rust Belt anymore. It's not going to be steel is just simply something that we do not possess the ability to do anything about right now. And the fact of the matter is, there are other sections of the economy that could replace them. There's nothing wrong with the fact that certain things die. That's what happens in nature. And when certain things die, other things take their place. The trick is to find those things.
Lisa?
Yeah, it was actually quite funny because he's actually talking like a Democrat, because that's what we say. Obama actually had in place a tremendous spending program for the Rust Belt to retrain a lot of those industries, to get them off coal and into other types of industries, to the horror of the Republicans, where the Republicans were actually saying the opposite of what Vincent just said, that, if you take away the coal, if you take away all of these Rust Belt industries, what will they live off of? And if you remember in the last election cycle, they were called the angry white men. Yeah, they were the angry white men that were in the Rust Belt that just believed that Trump was going to bring their jobs back because he was going to bring back coal. Yeah. So it's actually much more the Democratic mantra, and as I presented, one of the keys on of the platform for Biden and Harris is a tremendous investment in that area to do exactly, funnily enough, what Vincent just said, to retrain them and to give them new areas, but it's really scary. In Doggins Noddings Leave last week, there was a beautiful 5-page report on Gary, Indiana, on how amazingly tragic it is. And you can see Thomas Seltzer, that's also gone through the Rust Belt industry. It is a systemic challenge that is going to take a little bit more than investment. It's going to take a whole total rewiring that I think the Democrats are more likely to put the dollars behind, because the Republicans don't want to go into any type of true government structural reforms in order to make that happen.
Håkon Eide can get ready to ask his questions, and Vincent, you can comment.
That didn't happen when she suggested that's going to happen. And the fact of the matter is, that is bigger than any one presidency.
Yeah, so that's going to be a systematic change. That's going to be 4 or 5 administrations.
I don't know about systematic change, but what it'll have to do, that change will have to go over more than one administration. And it will take more than just words to get that done. And the thought that Democrats would be in control of that. Like they're going to, whose money will they be using to do this? Will it be taxpayer money, or will it be innovation money? What brought the Rust Belt to life in the first place?
That's probably an illustration of the different tactics.
No, it would be a demonstration of what private money can do. That would be money unfettered by the government.
Håkon? And Vemund can also get ready to ask his question.
Hello, everyone. First, I will thank you all for a very good debate so far. I will try to keep this brief. You've touched on it briefly before. The US has a two-party system. As you are all living in Norway, I mean, no doubt you've experienced a different system, a multi-party system. So my question is simply, if you are in support of the American two-party system, please explain why. If you are not for it, please give us your ideal alternative. And if you'd like, you can also compare and contrast it to the Norwegian system. Thank you.
I think we'll start with you, Jennifer.
Oh, okay. When I came to Norway, I had actually no problem with the two-party system because of the great variations in both parties. So I saw that a lot of different ideas got into the party through different avenues. We had different wings in the parties, and I saw that a lot of different views were represented in Congress, even though they weren't necessarily distinct parties. Where, I know the Norwegian system a bit, and I know that, of course, you have more parties with party discipline, but many different distinct parties represented in Stortinget. So it was, I, at the beginning, didn't really see an enormous difference in actual views being represented. I saw a difference in the number of parties, not necessarily the same thing. As the U.S. has become more divided and the debate has been squeezed into two camps, you either love everything Donald Trump did or you hate everything Donald Trump does, and it's not always a positive program on the other side. The Democratic Party famously has 12,000 positive programs. I don't like this. I don't like having nowhere else to go except some huge, great big party which becomes a grab bag of everything that they dislike about Trump, and it's going to set a difficult agenda for the Democrats when they win, hopefully, but we'll see, on Tuesday.
Vincent?
When we win the White House this time, more than likely what will happen is that you will see we don't have split parties here. And you'll notice I vote here, okay? And I'll tell you, there's not a whole lot of difference between Heute and Arbeiderpartiet. There isn't. There just isn't. The fact of the matter is there's not a whole lot of difference between Centerpartiet and FRP. They could, in effect, be the same as we are, because within our party, there are libertarians in our party. There are conservatives in our party. There are religious people in our party. There are all kinds of different Republicans. There are, God, there's millions of Democrats. The fact of the matter is that they coalesce into one system. Actually, it makes it a little easier to decide where you are.
Does it deprive voters of choice?
No, it doesn't, because within the party, that's what conventions are for, within the party, and that's why you're supposed to hammer out your party platform, right? The same thing you do here. The funny thing is, like, you have the red-green coalition here, right? And then you have the other side, right? Which is Erna and Steve, right? So that what has Steve been trying to do? She's been trying to, you call it freed. She approached Centerpartiet. Why? Because they are natural. They are natural components of each other.
So do you prefer the system you have in America with the two parties rather than...
I think it's a shortcut. It just makes it easier to get your point across within the larger party program.
Great. Vimin, you can get ready, and then Lisa, you...
Can I answer that question?
Yeah, please.
I have actually been reflecting, and there was one thing I didn't get a chance to answer when you said that, that about being a healthy distance from America, because I think one of the things that I've really reflected on being that healthy distance from America is questioning that two-party system, especially as we are now in an exceptionally polarized state, that I think the two-party system gives sort of that black-white digital type of mindset. Whereas when I look to Norway, if you are going to be in a political party in Norway, you have to collaborate. You have to, you have to form a coalition. So you cannot have these, very stringent rules on how far your party would go, and building collaboration into the system, I think, is a good thing. But what that other party would be in America is actually quite interesting. And also one thing I have to say is, Vincent was talking about where it's at the conventions where one sort of discusses what the party platform is. It should be noted that at the Republican convention, Donald Trump refused to have a negotiation on his party platform. It was totally unheard of. So I mean, one has to watch what they're saying versus what they're actually doing, because it is true. We actually revised our party platform based on tremendous input, both from the Bernie Sanders angle and the moderates, and actually even those that are to the right in our party, on a platform that we can all stand by. And when you see the Republican Party that basically, rather than having a party platform, it's just Donald Trump's platform. That's the danger. That's when you start to need to think about having a different system than the two-party system. Sorry, that was a long answer.
Great. Vimin, if you're out there, please. Great. And Sander Eide can get ready to ask his question.
Hi. My question is, why are views on economic issues, tax policies, for example, correlating so tightly with opinions on issues regarding race relations and immigration? Is there a logic behind this, or is it a symptom of a kind of an unhealthy team sport mentality in politics?
Wow, Jennifer, sounds like just up your street.
Oh, okay. I see the United States as having sort of two right-wing philosophies at the moment. One is neoliberalism, which is what I call, and other people call, market fundamentalism, that thinks the market is the solution to everything, and of kind of neoconservatism, although there are different kinds of that, but that's sort of an idea that market solutions are going to win everything, paired with incredible social authoritarianism, which is like strengthening rather authoritarian social institutions in the country. So what's the correlation there? Well, I think the notion that you should not have much in the way of the federal government, that remove that, and then sort of let power drift down to what I see as fairly oppressive organizations within the civil society, yeah, that tracks together. And if you're not going to have a federal government, you're not going to need all those tax dollars, which, by the way, might be recycled to people you don't like, right? So you end up with a rather tribal mentality here. So the problem with Americans is not that they don't like to aid other people. It's just that they don't like to aid certain other people. Right? So yes, and so the Democrats sort of end up as the mirror image of that they're willing to have a larger government, they're willing to have a larger tax share, and they're also willing to support a share of social policies that are based on redistribution.
Great. We'll take the next question from Sander. So,
Hi, my question is a little bit back to the two-party systems you have. You talked about your parties having a lot of fractions within and a lot of opinions, and yet you see a very low voter turnout. My question is, wouldn't changing to a multi-party system make voters feel like there's a party for them and also make the turnout better? And if not, how are you going to make the voter turnout higher in the US with the two-party system?
Would you like to answer, Vincent?
I think one of the things that is misunderstood by Europeans and other people, why the Americans only historically vote at about 50%, because more or less we think the same thing about government no matter who's in charge. Now, when there's a whole bunch of hullabaloo about anti-Trump, I guarantee you, this time next year, if we made a mistake and we end up with a Biden presidency, I guarantee you, it'll be worse. Because there's just too many of them who mean different things. And they think that they have the best way of governing. That's why the two-party system is best, because those things have to be included in how you get to government. And remember, in our the president is in charge of the executive branch. Normally what happens, different factions of that party get those federal jobs. So that in reality, there is multi-level, multi-party, multi-idealistic representation within the executive branch. And of course, in Congress is a mess.
Is this still true, though, with the Republican Party being so in line with Trump?
The Republican Party is in line with Trump for one reason, and one reason only. He governs like a Republican. Trust me, if he did not govern like a Republican, he would not be our president. He would not be the choice of the GOP. But he governs like a Republican.
Lisa?
Yeah,
Short,
he doesn't
please.
govern
Sorry.
like a Republican. He definitely does not govern like a Republican. To say that, I think there's a lot of Republicans that would be rolling in their graves, and a lot of them that would be running to their graves. You know, he governs such that, you know, do as I say or else, and that's why he has, you know, this infamous 90% approval rate, which nobody knows what polls he's talking about because they don't actually ask Republicans, do you support the president? But going back to the question, because I think it's actually very interesting, which the core of it was, you know, if we had more parties, would we increase voter participation? And I think we actually would, but I don't really know how a new party would actually evolve and develop. There's a phenomenal organization that you guys might have heard about, which is called the Lincoln Project, which are actually Republicans that have defected, not necessarily going to be Democrats, but they just cannot stand Trump. And they have raised enormous amount of monies and been super active on Twitter and done the most amazing videos and talk shows that are really, you know, a little bit nastier than Democrats actually like to be, but exceptionally effective in promoting our views. And there's a lot of us that are wondering what's going to happen with them once Trump is out. Are they going to be the new party that evolves? One could also look at the Squad and Bernie Sanders. If they don't get their way, you know, if they don't really want to see or to be part of some kind of new deal within the Democratic Party, will they form a new party? So I don't know, but I think that's a very interesting reflection. But I think this election, 55.5%, as I presented when I had my little intro, is where we were last time. And I think we will now have a higher level of interest in actual voting, hopefully not only in this election, but in elections going forward. Because if there's one thing that we can say is the good thing about Donald Trump is everybody understands the impact of their vote. Everybody understands a little bit more about government, much more than they ever have before.
We're going to have to take the final question from the audience. Hamza, Tariq, if you're out there, please. So we're actually running a bit out of time here, so we're going to have to do the questions quite brief and then the answers quite brief. But we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Hi, my question is to you, Vincent. You were talking about how Trump has basically put money into people's pockets. To me, it seems like he's more in favor of the big corporations than the common man. Like the student loan problem, like he's denying climate change, which has been scientifically proven. And like seeing Trump, when he talks, it doesn't seem like he's logical. Like he doesn't seem scientific or logical. I don't like. I'm sure a lot of people here will be agree with me on this, that it doesn't seem logical when he talks about, for example, climate change or COVID or everything. So, how do you explain that? Like, how is he then a people's guy rather than he's just supporting the corporations?
I really don't understand what you're talking about. I really don't know what you're getting at.
No, you said about that he's putting money back into people's pockets, right? But how do you justify that?
By 6,000, like by the, I'm sure Lisa, with all of her statistics and her numbers, know that the American family put $6,000 more in their family just since Trump's been president. Now that is something like all numbers and statistics you could argue about, because who knows where that came from.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's been said. What has been said?
Can I ask one more thing?
And in general, a Republican presidency puts money in your pockets through lower taxes and less regulation. That's what I'm talking about.
One last thing. You were talking about like being okay with Trump being a racist. I was born and raised in Pakistan, which was a British colony. And I can totally understand the pain of how through the more than 100 years, how my land was colonized, how the British took and stole our resources, how we ended up in a conflict, Pakistan and India, in which we shouldn't have been. How can you, I'm trying to relate it to like the slavery that happened in the US. How can you still say that like it's okay for Trump being racist?
Because the first thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to compare misery with misery, okay? Because I think everybody can concede colonialism sucks, slavery sucks, okay? Now, comparing the two is not going to get you very far, all right? So that you would look at it one way, I would look at it another, all right? Because that's just the way it is. Because me comparing my suffering to yours, whose suffering is better? Whose suffering is worse? Why would we want, and besides, why would we want to do that? Why would we want to go on about how hard it was, as opposed to what have we done to overcome that?
So you think we should forget the history?
I think that we should not worry about what is our problems and worry about how we will go about finding solutions. That's what I think is more important.
Thank you, Hamza. I'm sorry, we're going to have to move on. Before we go, I just want to speak a little bit about the next 4 years. And I want to direct the question to you first, Lisa. What does Biden's America look like?
Oh,
briefly.
But Biden's America is a much more united America than we've seen under Donald Trump. Biden's America is, from a personal standpoint, I'll start with the racial inequality and wonderful questions that came up last. I'm sorry they weren't adequately answered, but I guess I don't have time to give any retorts there, so I won't go there, and I'm sure Vincent will be happy. But it will be in America where the racial inequality and injustices are addressed in a systematic way. where COVID is addressed nationally, where we have a national strategy, where climate becomes something that we talk about in real terms, where we're going truthfully to renewable energies, where there isn't like this fear of the oil industry leaving us.
We're going to have to leave you there because we're going to have to move on. Vincent, what does Trump's America look like?
Trump's America looks like what we, the people, decided will look like. It will not be Congress. It will not be the president. It will be the people who decide what the next 4 years look like. And the president is to respond. Whoever the president is, luckily for us, it'll be Trump. But whoever the president will respond to the American people. He won't be president.
Lisa, what does Trump's America look like?
What can I say? I think, globally, people are concerned about Trump. The diplomatic relations around the world are sort of in tethers. Racial discourse will continue. There's actually several intellectuals that are seriously concerned about a new civil war. Yeah, I think with the Supreme Court the way it is, a reversal of all the Roe v. Wade and other bastions of our legal legacy will be totally wiped away. LGBT rights out the window. I think we'll see a total U-turn. But not only that, I think most importantly, what Trump is in it for himself. So he will ensure that he protects he and his family and his wealth from all the, list of litigation that is awaiting him to prevent that he doesn't end up in jail after, let's say, he wins another 4 years thereafter.
That was a short answer?
That's a short answer. Vincent, what does Biden's America look like?
The Biden administration will be what the cultural elites decided will be, because I have this feeling that the average American will be bypassed by this cultural elitism of people who have a sore spot because Trump became president. I mean, get over it. So the fact of the matter is that it would be too many people deciding for us instead of us deciding for us.
Jennifer, these two are representatives of these two sides, and the answers they give are clearly divisive. Is this fixable?
Is it fixable?
Is the American democracy fixable? Is the civil discourse fixable?
It's difficult. It's not secret that I'm trending more Democrat here than Republican. I see that the divide will get worse if Trump is reelected. The rule of law will decline. This idea that somehow there's a genuine America that Trump represents and that the elites aren't really part of America and this is not going to be something that reflects the views of true Americans is the kind of really divisive talk that is going to drive it even worse. So Trump, as in the role that he's acting, he's deliberately splitting, playing only to his base, never really reaching out to anyone else. So, and at the same time, he and his cronies in the GOP are ripping down the rule of law. So I don't really think it's going to be a good place in the future. So I tend more towards the Democratic answer. If Biden's elected, it's not going to be a paradise. Biden's not going to wave his wand and fix everything. There's no savior coming. The U.S. will have to start on a long, long road of trying to talk to each other again, even at the level of neighborhoods. But we have to put this presidency behind us.
I want to end tonight with a quick yes and no question. Have you personally lost friends due to political differences? Lisa?
Absolutely.
Vincent?
No.
Jennifer?
Yes, yes.
That's what we've got time for tonight. I'll give the word back to Karen. Please give them a round of applause for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much to our speakers, to Jakob and everyone who asked questions. We will now move on to point 10 in the agenda, which is other. Are there anyone who wants to express themselves here?
Samfunnsmøte. Mitt navn Bent, og jeg sliten og litt lei, og jeg har vært litt trist. Fordi Studentsamfunnet har vært midtpunktet i mitt liv siden jeg begynte å studere her i 2013. Og nå så er det egentlig vanskelig bare trist å gå rundt der. Etter siste ukas innstramminger så er det liksom selv det å ta en pils etter jobb, noe vi egentlig ikke kan ta oss tida til. Eller få til fordi vi kan ikke være mer enn 5 eller 6 personer samlet. Jeg vil ha hverdagen min tilbake, jeg vil ha samfunnet mitt tilbake, jeg vil ha flatfylla mi tilbake. Og jeg har jævlig lyst til å kunne få arrangert uka 21 på noenlunde fornuftig måte. Så jeg vil oppfordre alle til å følge de der forbanna smittevernsreglene. 1 meter er jævlig langt, men det går faktisk an. Du klarer å ha fest med dine 5 nærmeste venner. Du klarer å teste deg hvis du må. Det er også jævlig kjedelig å være i karantene i 2 uker. Men alternativet er at vi må være hjemme hele tiden. Og til NTNU, da faen meg skjerp dere og kjør hjemmeeksamen på alt. Takk for meg.
Thank you so much to Bent. Now we will move on to point 11, which is criticism of the meeting. Are there anyone who has any feedback to this meeting? It doesn't seem like it. Before finishing, I want to mention a couple of the upcoming events that the board put on the next week. Next Wednesday, we will have an onsdagsdebatt about topptur, and this Friday we will host a political lunch with Guri Melby. Next Saturday, we are back with Samfundsmøte Kvinnekamp i Saudi-Arabia in collaboration with Amnesty International. I hope to see all of you there. I want to thank the following for organizing this meeting with us. Vincent Baugh, Lisa Cooper, Jennifer Leigh, styrets debattkomité, Strindens promenadeorkester, forsterkerkomiteen, regi, videokomiteen, studentmediene, markedsføringsgjengen, ITK, rådet, lørdagskomiteen, vertskapet, fotogjengen, the security guards, and kafé- og serveringsgjengen. The meeting is adjourned.